Hi, my name's John. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how we built our spawning beds. We built some synthetic spawning beds, but before I start, I want to talk about our old beds. When we closed on the property in the spring of 2023, it was very overgrown property. We came in, had a bunch of tree work done. Then when things were cleared, we discovered that there were quite a few honeycomb-looking spawning beds right over in that direction. And the fish were in the middle of a spawn. It was just a thing of beauty to see. Well, the next January, there was a big flood, and with the clearing of the property and the redoing of the ditches, it caused a flood issue that actually flooded over and silted in those beds. So last year in 2024, there was never even a noticeable spawn. We didn't see anything. The water quality had changed. We just done so much that we really didn't have the habitat in place. They probably spawned, but spawned in other areas where it wasn't as visible. But we didn't have the fry along the shoreline the way that we had the previous year. So this year we decided that in March that we were going to put together some synthetic spawning beds. I wanted to put something in that I had heard that you need to elevate them up to keep the silt out of them, put them on a raised foundation. Well, with everything here existing, it's not like I was going to drain the pond down and build it up and put down the fabric and do all of that. So I started looking for alternatives, and I'd seen that people make fish structure out of milk crates. And so I started doing a little bit of research, and I thought, well, if I get them up off of the bed, that's going to handle my silting problem, but also it could provide some cover. And one thing to know is that fry, when they're born, it takes about 12,000 little baby fry to make 1 pound. Just 1 pound, 12,000 of them. But if they can live for 45 days, it's only 30 per pound. So having good structure and cover for those young fry in their first 45 days of life is really important. So I thought about, okay, let's take crates, let's turn them upside down, let's build up a base, we'll put a shelf around the top and actually put the spawning beds there. So I went on a marketplace and I found vegetable crates, and the vegetable crates were like $2 a piece, and with one I got like 50 of them. And then I found a guy with a Mexican market that had stacks of them out there, and he only wanted $1 a piece. They were just piled up behind his store, and so I got the rest of them there. Now, the way that we joined them together was we used zip ties. Oh my goodness, we used a lot of zip ties. Sore fingers. Harbor Freight, great place to get your zip ties really cheap. Different sizes, 4-inch, 8-inch, 11-inch. Based on how many things you're tying together. We tended to use a lot more 8s and 11s on more of the structure, but for the spawning beds, we pretty much used 8s for most of it, although we used 4 for tying the landscape fabric. But we built a base, a solid base that was flipped upside down, and then from there, we put a rim around it so that we could have a tray for the pea gravel, and we built that out, made that work. Then we flipped them over and we rolled landscape fabric out and zip tied it around the sides. And then from there we stacked them up on the dock, which this dock, I did a video on our rolling dock. Boy, we just had some big action going over there on one of the spawning beds right now. And we stacked the 3 spawning beds up on the dock. We put a tarp down, put gravel on the dock, wheelbarrowed the gravel on, and we floated the dock over, and we sunk the beds, and then we just raked the pea gravel into the beds. So we placed 3 of them. 2 of them are in really ideal locations. Another one is kind of on a slope. It'll probably need to be moved this year and kind of reset. It's a little high on one side and low on the other. That one has had a large bass in it at the first spawn, but that one hasn't really had much activity. It's mostly overgrown in algae right now. It's just the one spot the bass had spawned is still clear. A few fish have spawned in it, but the other 2 have been really full of bluegill. We've had 2 really good spawns. I did the video on the spawning attack where we had the nest overtaken and turned into a feeding frenzy. you'll see that video on there, taken in one of these spawning beds. But it's really worked out well, and it's the first place I put my eyes when I come in every day, is to see how the spawn is and what's going on. The fish are circling around me wanting more food. This year I'm going to do some maintenance on them. We also made some small ones, which were just single spawning trays with an elevated base on them as well, and dropped them in different places. But this year I'm gonna relocate those in the wintertime, because some of the learnings. So bluegill are communal spawners, and the bigger the spawning bed and the spawning area, the more bluegill you're gonna have in that area. The small beds that I made are really more for your solitary spawners, like the bass. And I think I need to put those off in areas that are a little bit more known to have my bass in just some different areas around here. But the other learning is that even though I built some fry cover underneath those spawning beds, I really need to build some accessory habitat in near proximity of those spawning beds to also help keep as many of those fry around as possible, to get more insects into there, and to just kind of keep it kind of a wave around the spawning bed. So just the spawning beds this last year, and then a lot of the habitat we put was very far away. We need intermediate habitat around the spawning beds. So this year I'm going to build some intermediate habitat to go closer to the spawning beds. So when they come off of the nest, if they're not going underneath, who knows if they are going underneath or not, but we can have some more intermediate habitat so they don't all have to go and rely on being on the shoreline. The spawning beds are close to the shoreline, but I'd like to have some stuff around it. Also, too, this year, watching the way that the fish stage when they come up to the spawning bed, I think that's kind of a decent learning to understand how they're going to act. So how and where I'm going to build in the supplemental habitat, so that I know what I'm going at for next year. So if you have any comments or anything that you've done or ideas for things that we can do to improve, please drop them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, and if you want more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. So I appreciate you coming on today. Thank you. See you on the next one.